In this travel tech episode, I'm kind of bending the definition of travel just slightly. This is the Uperfect Delta folding monitor, and before I go into why I personally consider this a great piece of equipment for travel, I just wanted to let you know for full transparency that Uperfect sent me this piece of equipment to test out for this unbiased review. They will not see this video before you do, and everything that I say is my own opinion. Please check out my ethics statement in the description below, and maybe also check out my podcast where I go over why all of my reviews are unbiased, even if I get some piece of equipment for free. Furthermore, I will obviously tell you all about the negatives, trade-offs and flaws about this piece of equipment, because I personally believe that if you know about those trade-offs and flaws, you can determine if you can live or work around these flaws instead of just looking at the positives. More importantly, I will not go into the technical details because I want to give you my personal experience of this piece of equipment from a professional film editor's point of view, and more importantly as a piece of travel tech. So future Bo here, I was actually just about to shoot the B-roll of the Uperfect Delta being connected to my MacBook Pro. I finished all of the A-roll of this video, so what I just noticed is that all of my USB-C ports on my very old MacBook Pro Retina Intel edition, so it's really old. I mean, we are already at M4 Apple chips on these MacBooks, so you can figure out how old this thing actually is. They don't work anymore, so I cannot connect the Uperfect Delta monitor to the MacBook Pro. I don't know what happened, because I was actually testing this a few weeks ago, and actually, a couple of days ago, I connected a SSD drive to my MacBook Pro Retina and everything was working well. So I don't know what exactly happened during this time. It didn't happen when I was connecting the monitor. As I said, a couple of days ago, an SSD was still working on the USB-C ports of my old MacBook Pro Retina, but now they don't work. So unfortunately, I don't have any B-roll of the monitor being connected to the MacBook Pro. So please excuse whenever I mention the Uperfect being connected to the MacBook Pro. I actually wanted to show some B-roll of that, but I don't have that. What you see now on the display is actually my Samsung Fold 5 in DeX mode. So I will include some B-roll of that, but it's not connected to my MacBook Pro. So please excuse that. As I said, a couple of weeks ago on the project, I was using the Uperfect Delta on my MacBook Pro as an external monitor, but yeah, I don't know. I guess my MacBook wants to tell me, hey, buy a new one, or Apple is telling me, hey, why don't you buy the new M4 MacBooks? I don't know. That might be the reason why my USB ports don't work anymore. Yeah, but just that you know, all of the B-roll now doesn't show the Uperfect Delta being connected to my MacBook Pro Retina Intel edition, but it will show my Samsung Fold 5 in DeX mode, and I will just put the MacBook Pro next to it. So yeah, those B-roll look maybe different than whatever I'm saying on the A-roll. So the Uperfect Delta is a folding monitor that honestly has been something that I was always looking for, because as a freelance film editor, usually I come to an office or a post-production house where either there is all of the equipment set up, but not necessarily all of the monitors have enough real estate for me to work on. Or I get to an office and I need to set up my own workstation, which is a MacBook Pro. And while the MacBook Pro has a good monitor, there is not enough real estate for me to work in Adobe Premiere. So having an external monitor always has been something that I wanted to carry with me. But carrying an external monitor isn't that great in terms of weight and overall size. And then you suddenly have an external monitor that is portable but tiny, and that doesn't give you that much workable space to kind of spread out everything that you need in Adobe Premiere, for example. So this Uperfect Delta has two 1080p 15-inch monitors folded up in a fairly compact size that fits many of my backpacks, because it's not that much bigger in terms of footprint than my MacBook Pro Retina 15-inch. So I can get to an office, and please excuse, I have been using this monitor for 2 different projects on which both times I had to sign an NDA, so I wasn't able to film on location, unfortunately. So all of the B-roll that you see in this video are from me using the monitor at home, and I would have wished to film it at those locations so you could have seen my setup, but as I said, I signed an NDA. For those of you who don't know, it's a non-disclosure agreement where, yeah, I'm not allowed to film at those locations. So what I did is I set up my MacBook Pro, put the Uperfect Delta right next to the MacBook, and then you have basically 2 options to connect the monitor. Either with USB-C to your MacBook Pro or with 2 HDMI mini cables to any source that you want. So what I usually do is I set up the laptop on the middle because the MacBook Pro screen is much higher fidelity and much better than the Uperfect Delta, to which I will come in the negative section in just a minute, and then put the Uperfect Delta on one side of my MacBook, fold it up, and then I connect the USB-C port to my MacBook Pro, giving me 2 screens. I use the upper part always to show the full screen of whatever I'm editing, and the bottom part to distribute my project window, my folders, and my so-called bins that are in Adobe Premiere, while my timeline and my 2 screens for the editing are on my MacBook Pro. But at home, I also use the Uperfect Delta as a 3rd screen on my Mac Studio setup. The good thing about the Uperfect Delta is that not only do you have a very sturdy and very confidence-inspiring stand on the monitor itself, but you also have a VESA mount. So when I'm at home here on my workstation, I have a VESA mount on the Uperfect Delta, and it is connected on a monitor arm right next to my Dell 4K monitor in the middle, which is my main work screen. So what I do is basically I have also the LG monitor here. I know that's a little bit of an overkill, but it makes working so much easier. So what I usually do is I have my main editing screen on the Dell, then I have all of my bins, my project screen on my LG, but the Uperfect Delta is the bottom part is either for emails or maybe watching YouTube, and the top screen shows everything that I'm doing when editing. So it gives me a bigger preview of what I'm editing while I have the 2 preview screens in Adobe Premiere on my 4K monitor. To summarize, I basically use the Uperfect Delta at home on the VESA mount to kind of give me some more real estate plus a preview of my editing. And when I am on the go traveling to a client, I use the screen as a 2nd and 3rd monitor for my MacBook Pro. So to summarize, I think this is a perfect professional travel piece of equipment for anyone who's working on a laptop and needs more screen real estate. I mean, that is obvious, but let's go over a couple of more of the positives. As I said, because this is folding, you get 2 15-inch screens with 1080p resolution in a fairly small form factor that fits easily in your backpack. And the case and the stand is made out of aluminum, and the folding hinge is very sturdy. So when you put it on your desk and the desk is a little bit wobbly, everything stands very securely on this stand, and the folding part is not bound to kind of wobble over and fold the monitor down. So that is a very good positive, and I would say the build quality of this monitor is incredible. Furthermore, what's really good about the hinge, you can actually fold it over into a somewhat tent mode. So what you could do is, if you are sitting on a desk, and this is a configuration that is available in many post-production houses, where you as the editor sit in front of the desk, but the client sits right in front of you on the other side of the desk. So you can fold it over in tent mode. You have your editing screen on one side and give the preview monitor of what you're editing to the other side. So your client can watch on the same screen while you're editing, and the client is not necessarily like right behind you and breathing down your neck. So that is a feature that I like a lot. Furthermore, you could actually also use this in a somewhat co-space scenario where there are 2 laptops laptops, you put it in tent mode, and one is editing on one side of the screen and the other person connects via HDMI to the other screen of the Uperfect Delta, which I think is a great option. I haven't used that option before, but that is something, if you're working on a desk and maybe you want to share one of those two screens, that is amazing. And more importantly, all of the cables are included. So inside you have two HDMI cables, two USB-C cables, one of which you will need for the power supply, to which I get in a second in the negatives, and a power brick. So everything that you would need to connect to video sources, either from two computers, or in my case, maybe from my computer and then from my editing output, everything is included, which is amazing. Now let's get to the negatives. And I just mentioned in my home setup that I have the Dell 4K monitor in the middle and then right next to it the Uperfect Delta. And the Uperfect Delta is in air quotes, in really big air quotes, just 1080p. For most scenarios and for what I do, meaning just putting my bins in there, my project window, my folders and stuff like that, for that it is totally fine. You can perfectly work from the Uperfect. However, if you see it right next to a 4K monitor, you kind of see that it is not as crisp as on the 4K. That is a given, and that is not necessarily a negative, but I just wanted to mention it because I feel many people nowadays might have a 4K monitor or a 4K phone, for example, and are kind of used to very crisp text on their screen, and then potentially, especially if you put it right next to a MacBook Pro, you might notice that it's not as crisp as your MacBook Pro. But as I said, that's a given with a 1080p monitor, and I think for what it's supposed to do, extending your existing monitor so you are able to create more real estate to spread out folders, emails, and project windows of, for example, Adobe Premiere, I think that is more than enough. Then what I also mentioned is the cable. You get two USB-C cables, but one of which will be needed to power that monitor. And that is really important because these are two 15-inch 1080p monitors. They need power. And in the beginning, what I did was a really stupid mistake. I thought, well, I just connect any USB power plug from my phone or whatever. And what I noticed is when I connected the monitor to my setup and I just powered it with some random power brick, the monitor, I also switched on the brightness to 100%. It kept like flickering, not flickering, but it went off and then went on again, and I was really confused that I maybe have not properly connected the HDMI cable, and I thought the HDMI cable had some connection errors. That was not the case. I just wasn't providing the two monitors not enough power. So you will need to use the power brick that is inside the box and the USB-C cable to power those two monitors to get A, 100% brightness, and B, to make sure it doesn't like switch off and on during your use. So that is something that you will really need to keep in mind. And this is not necessarily negative, but something, yeah, that I noticed, and you really need to power this device with the appropriate voltage and the appropriate power brick, so you won't get into those issues. Next up, what's really important is this is also when you put it next to your MacBook Pro Retina or your Dell 4K monitor, the colors aren't as vivid as those monitors. And just like the 1080p in air quotes issue or trade-off, it is not necessarily a production monitor with the intended use of maybe Photoshop, Adobe Premiere, color grading, but more in terms of expanding your workspace and doing like spreadsheets, text processing, yeah, Word and stuff like that. But as I said, for me, this is not necessarily a monitor to do color grading, to do Photoshop work, but more importantly, to extend the workspace that I need for Adobe Premiere. For example, in Adobe Premiere, you have timeline, your two monitors, your source monitor and your program monitor, meaning you see what's in the timeline, but you also have your project window with all of the bins and all of the clips that you need. And on a 15-inch screen, that gets crowded really fast. So what I want to do and what I need to do is to take that project window with all of the folders and all of the clips, which is just text, put that on a Uperfect Delta and outsource it so my MacBook Pro screen has enough real estate for my program and my source window and my timeline. That is what this Uperfect monitor is for. And then the top screen can show me the preview of my timeline program window, what I'm currently editing. And there, it's not necessarily necessary that the colors are perfect, because if I want to judge the colors, I can look at my MacBook Pro screen or my Dell 4K screen, but I can see whatever I'm editing on a bigger screen. So yeah, keep that in mind. The colors aren't as correct and as vivid as on other screens that you're working on. Next up is the buttons and the scroll wheel on the side. Those aren't great. Those are definitely the biggest negative that I can say about the Uperfect Delta. The buttons, the two buttons for the up and the lower screen and the toggle wheels are really mushy and not that great to navigate the on-screen menus like brightness, volume, input selection. Yeah, they feel very mushy, and when you kind of try to select something in the menu, you need to push that toggle wheel, and then when you push it, you kind of accidentally push up or down and kind of mess up what you have been inputting to get inside. It's not great, and I would have wished that the buttons and that toggle wheels are much better. I really dislike those, to be quite honest. So in summary, as I said, I mentioned all of these negatives, trade-offs, flaws, so you can decide if you can work around these trade-offs or live with them, and if the positives outweigh these trade-offs. And in my case, I can say that the negatives or these trade-offs, like the mushy buttons because I only need to set it up once, or the resolution and the colors, those are trade-offs that I can personally live with, because this setup gives me much more real estate, and I know that I will only use the Uperfect Delta to expand my workspace and kind of move the parts of my workspace to the Delta that are not that resolution and color critical. For example, in Adobe Premiere, you have a source monitor, a program monitor, a timeline, a project window with all of the folders and bins, and that is only text. So by moving the project window with all of the folders, and that is only text, to the Uperfect Delta gives me enough real estate on my MacBook Pro for the source monitor, the program monitor, and the timeline. And then the Uperfect gives me a preview monitor on the top part of that dual screen setup to kind of see whatever I'm editing in a bigger screen, whilst I can still color grade on my MacBook Pro, or in this workstation setup, this desktop workstation setup on my Dell 4K monitor. So the Uperfect Delta is just, in air quotes, just to expand my real estate, monitor real estate, and my workspace. And more importantly, whenever I travel, and this is travel tech, when I travel as a film editor, as a professional film editor to a client, this monitor being able to fold down and being able to easily put in my backpack, whilst it is folded, the screens are protected, the casing is out of aluminum, I don't have to worry about kind of chucking it in my backpack. And therefore, again, this for me is a perfect travel piece of equipment if I'm traveling for work. I go to a client, fold it up, put up the very sturdy stand, put it on the table, and then expand the monitors that are on their workstation. Or if I need to work on my own MacBook Pro, I have a monitor set up in my backpack, and that is such an amazing feature. I love this so much, because in the past I either had to ask the client, hey, do you have a good monitor, or I had to travel with these fairly compact 15-inch monitors, which were okay, but yeah, they weren't that great. Plus, because it's just one monitor, the display side was kind of in danger of getting crushed in my backpack. And with the Delta, because it's folded up, because because the back is made out of aluminum, I wouldn't have to worry that the fragile display area is in danger of being crushed, scratched, or anything else. So for me, that is a feature that I like a lot. And being dual purpose, I do not like if I have any piece of equipment just being able to use in one scenario. Meaning if I only would have be able to use this in a travel scenario, I probably wouldn't enjoy it that much, because yes, I could put it somewhere on my desk and stand on this little stand, but it would take away from my desk so much. However, it has a VESA mount, so I can use it on a monitor arm here on my desktop workstation, and then suddenly this becomes a dual purpose. When traveling, I can just fold it up, put it in my backpack, keep the VESA mount on it because it doesn't take away much of the space. And then when I get back home, I just put it on the VESA mount again, and then it's on my desktop without taking away any of my desk real estate. That is why this is, for me personally, a perfect investment. And I love this monitor so much, because it makes editing wherever I am, at a client, maybe here at home, in the kitchen, whenever I kind of want to work close to my wife when she is in the living room kind of watching a movie, then I can sit on the desk next to her, put headphones on, and then have a workstation on our dinner table whilst still having two big screens in addition to my MacBook Pro screen. And I really like that a lot. That is why I think this is a perfect piece of equipment for traveling, and therefore it belongs in my travel tech category. Again, this is for professionals, for work, and not necessarily travel tech in terms of vacation, in terms of traveling for leisure. So yeah, keep that in mind. I was bending the definition of travel tech a little bit. This is just for work. So what do you think about this Uperfect Delta folding screen? I really like it a lot. If you want to kind of consider buying it, check out the links below. Those are affiliate links. With those you won't pay more, but you will support the channel with a small kickback of that sale. So what do you think about this type of equipment for traveling, especially if you're traveling as a professional? If you have a lot of business trips and you were always wishing for a little bit more real estate on your laptop, would you get a folding screen like this? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you have any questions, also comment below. And if you are considering maybe a different style of monitor with glasses, check out the video up here, and YouTube thinks that you might like the video down here. And don't forget to subscribe by clicking the button up here so you won't miss next videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next videos.